All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart. Both books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing Elizabeth George and her new mystery, Something to Hide. This is book number 21 in her Inspector Linley, Inspector Barbara Havers mystery series. I have all 20 previous books in the series right there. Many of them are signed because I have met Elizabeth George on several occasions and she has signed all of the books to me. And you know, I show off. If I get books signed to me by the authors, I show them off. Pretty much my whole collection has been signed by Elizabeth George. She is one of my favorite mystery writers, probably in my top 5 favorite mystery writers of all time. And I have got a lot of mystery books in my library. I mean, I've probably got 4,500 books in this library, and there's a good third of them that are mystery novels. So I read a lot. I know what I'm talking about. These books are dynamite. Let's talk about book number 21. We always review the covers first. They always do very elegant covers for Elizabeth George mystery novels. We've got a nice foggy London landscape here. It's very well done. No complaints. They're all pretty similar in style. They all kind of have that same sort of London foggy look to them. They're all real good. What's this one about? Okay, these are mystery books that are thick. Elizabeth George writes really thick mysteries. 1,000 pages, most of them. So they're very detail oriented. A lot of characters, a lot of plot twists, a lot of plot developments, a lot of red herrings, a lot of things you've got to follow if you want to enjoy these books. That's one of the reasons I love these books, is because of their scope and depth and epic feel. Now, this one starts out, as all of the Inspector Linley novels start out, with the premise. Before we get to Inspector Linley and Inspector Havers solving the case, we spend about 100 or 200 pages just setting up the murder mystery, introducing all the characters that are going to have to be investigated and all of their plot lines. This is why Elizabeth George is such a great storyteller, is because before we even get to the investigation, we already know all of the players involved in the murder, because she takes the first couple 100 pages of every book, introducing us to everybody, even before we get to the investigators. So you're not going to see Inspector Linley or Inspector Havers enter the book until about 150 pages in. What happens? What is the setup of this one? Well, it's set in the Nigerian community in the heart of London. All of their books, all of Elizabeth George's books, the Inspector Linley books, take place in and around England or Europe. Sometimes they move off to Italy and things like that. But this one takes place in the heart of London, in the Nigerian immigrant community. There's a boy named Tani, and he is living there with his family, his younger sister. His father is a very traditional Nigerian man who has arranged a marriage for Tani. He has taken a bride price from another Nigerian man, and that Nigerian man is going to give Tani his daughter in marriage. And Tani does not want this. He wants to find love on his own. He understands that he is in Europe, that he is no longer in Nigeria, and that the rules are different here, and he has freedom. And he tells his father, I don't want you to arrange a marriage for me. And his father's like, I've already taken the bride price. You will marry this girl. Not only that, but Tani has a younger sister who's 10 years old. And her name is Simi. And her father wants to take her and give her away as a bride and accept a bride price from another man. And he wants to sell her as a 10-year-old. Not only that, but he wants to mutilate her genitals to keep her a virgin until she can be married as a young girl. Now, Tani does not want to have any he finds this out and he is just like, this is not the way life should be anymore. We are not living in Nigeria anymore. This is what the book is about. We also get another character named Mark, who's a policeman who's having a sort of a secret affair on the side. And then we've got Deborah St. James, who is a recurring character in the series, who is married to one of the investigators that knows Linley and Havers. And she is a photographer, and she is, at the beginning of this book, she is photographing the inner city Nigerian, community. She's doing photography there. So all of this ties together when we get our murder. Who is our murder victim? Well, it is a Nigerian-born police officer who is doing some undercover work in this Nigerian community in London. That's who's dead. That's who we have to solve the mystery for. Elizabeth George gets into some deep, deep stuff here. Some grim stuff, especially about the immigrants that are making their way into Europe and the cultural things that they are bringing with them that just seem so out of place in Western society. For instance, the honor killings of women who don't behave according to their husband's plans, or daughters that get their genitals mutilated. This stuff goes on, and she discusses it in grim detail. And it is a huge, huge, huge part of the plot of this murder. And we get to see how people react to this stuff, how the investigators react, why the murder took place. Once Inspector Linley and Inspector Havers start investigating this murder and getting themselves deeply entrenched into this community and into this fellow police officer who was a Nigerian, who has now been murdered, who was undercover, doing work in this community, the things he was finding out, and how dark that it can be. And then the writer does a good job of remaining pretty politically neutral and to not scare away readers, but we do get a sense of those sort of virtue signaling type people that base everything about racism and systematic racism, and how they think that they're helping the world by bringing racism into every single discussion they have about everything, and how damaging that really is to these communities, and how these communities that are still sort of stuck in their backwards cultural ways, once they move to Western societies, how hard it is for them to break from those traditions that are really harmful to women, and how a lot of the virtue signaling of the do-gooders hampers that whole discussion and shuts the whole discussion down. Nobody wants to discuss anything in this book because they know they're going to be called a racist. And it's a problem for the investigation, for the poor people involved in the murders, the young girls that are getting their genitals mutilated, the young girls that are getting bought and sold for bride prices. She dances around these subjects pretty delicately, even more delicately than I just described it. But you get a sense of impending doom that just how do these problems get fixed? How do these things get fixed? How can we be fair to everybody? How can we keep cultures alive, but yet, sort of get rid of the harmful parts of those cultures, kind of thing. It's kind of the theme of what's going on here, wrapped around a pretty grim murder and a pretty engaging plot and murder mystery. But all of her stuff is like that. She takes on some pretty tough subjects. Anyway, I love this book. I was gripped from the moment it started to the moment it ended. I loved everything about it. I give this as one of her best works by far. I give this a solid 10 out of 10 for mystery writing. It is just that spot on, gripping, and you learn a lot of stuff about things you didn't know about, which is why we read. Anyway, I can't recommend this enough. Book number 21 in the Inspector Linley mysteries. A+ from me.